Hey guys, welcome to Indigo's Whispers of Wisdom, and today's episode, the first transmission, we will be discussing the Emerald Founder records, the 12 CDT plates some have a familiar sense with because of the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which was the 11th CDT plate that he stole that was only supposed to be taught through spoken word and not translated into physical text because of the manipulation and the abuse the knowledge preserved could possibly be used for, but that's another episode. And I do have the Betrayal of Thoth on my channel, a two-part series to get more familiar with how that event took place in Atlantis. Now, furthermore, these texts hold the deepest, most sacred knowledge about the origins, genetics, and divine purpose of humanity. These ancient records contain historical accounts that trace the galactic journey of our species, revealing truths that are the divine birthright of all human beings. And inside these holographic discs, large selenite crystal plates, if you can imagine, is profound wisdom about the cosmic sovereign universal law of one, the unifying principles that govern all of existence. And through these teachings, humans were shown the way to spiritually activate their light body and undergo consciousness training to achieve full liberation as a Christ, a state of an enlightened being. Christ consciousness. This knowledge was protected and safeguarded by the founder guardians that reside in ancient genetic libraries that exist outside of time itself. Now, this library is carefully preserved on Earth. It's held in trust for humanity until we awaken and remember our true nature. Now, this plan was put into motion during the Covenant of Paliador, a divine fail-safe mechanism established by the Guardian Host to ensure the successful reclamation of the Christos mission. And as we begin to remember, we reconnect to the legacy of these ancient teachings, and the truth of who we really are slowly starts to unfold. So stay tuned as we dive deeper into this cosmic wisdom and what it means for us today. I believe every 26,000 years and some change, the Earth does go through an activation cycle known as the Stellar Activation Cycle, SAC, known today as the end times. But to continue, as the Earth went into the stellar activation cycle and it approached a critical point, a time when the crystalline grid of Earth would be capable of holding the highest Christ frequencies, the intelligent coding contained within the CDT plates, which needed to be carefully safeguarded, especially in this time period. The Emerald Founders entrusted the High Sirian Council with the task of preserving the holy records for the future of Earth's timeline. This time we are in now, the age of awakening, where all knowledge that was hidden is now coming back online. We're diving into a deep ancient Earth history that explores the origins and evolution of our planet's earliest civilizations, a time long before written history and before the mythologies of human culture were ever born. This story stretches back to over 1 million years ago and merges the rise of long forgotten civilizations like the Lemurians and the mysterious interactions of the ancient races, which some are depicted in the hieroglyphs of today, and the intrusion of an extraterrestrial force that would leave its mark on our world forever. So let's travel together back to a time when beings like the Lemurians, the Ayrians, the Brenua, the Ayrians, and the Hibiru coexisted on Earth, evolving together in what we now refer to as the second seeding, which occurred around 3.7 million years ago. So, the rise of the Lemurians and the second seeding. Now, the second seeding, which began millions of years ago, has been a pivotal moment in Earth's history that's been hidden during this time. Ancient races such as the Lemurians, the Ayrians, the Brenua, the Ayrians, and the Hibiru emerged, each contributing to the cosmic symphony of life on Earth. These beings were part of a grand plan to cultivate and evolve the human species, building upon a foundation of wisdom, spiritual development, and genetic potential. The Lemurians, the first of these races, were deeply connected to the natural world and operated on a higher plane of consciousness. They were aware of the energetic fields that connected all life, and their civilization flourished in harmony with the earth. Now, in this time, the Ayrians, on the other hand, were more technologically advanced, often bridging the gap between the physical and the spiritual. Together, these ancient groups formed the basis of what we now understand as the early root races of humanity. Yet, as we know, evolution is rarely a straight path, and the history of Earth is far from simple. So now we must dive into the start of the Lemurian Holocaust, the arrival of the Dracon, a dark turn in Earth's genetic history. So approximately 1 million years ago, everything changed when an external force entered the equation, a race known as the Dracon emerging from Harmonic Universe 1, the Orion star system. The Dracon were a sentient and highly intelligent species, but they were far from peaceful. They were dragon or lizard-like in appearance, tall, upright beings who possessed superior scientific knowledge, particularly in the realm of genetics, but the Dracon were not known for their spiritual development. In fact, they were often regarded as aggressive, warlike, and lacking empathy for other forms of life. They had a reputation for disrupting the natural order, and unfortunately, their arrival on Earth would follow that very pattern. The Dracon race began tampering with the genetic codes of the existing races on Earth. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Interfering with the delicate balance that had been established during the second seeding. Their genetic expertise was used not for the advancement of the human species, but for the experimentation, creating hybrids that fused the DNA of the existing races with their own Dracon genetics. These hybrids, which came to be known as the Dracos, carried the genetic imprint of the Dracon. They were taller, more reptilian, and their temperament was far more aggressive than the peaceful races they were derived from. The Dracos were not just a blend of human and Dracon, they were an entirely new strain, more lizard-like in appearance and demeanor. Their faces were elongated with sharp features and predatory instincts, a direct reflection of the Dracon themselves. They were strong, resilient, and capable of surviving in harsh conditions, but this was all due, and this ability of theirs has been honed through their own evolutionary history and their home star system. But the most profound alteration came not in their physical form, but in their consciousness. The Dracos carried the aggressive nature of the Dracon race, which was known for being territorial, militaristic, and driven by conquest. This aggression was embedded in their psyche, disrupting the peaceful spiritual evolution that had been intended for Earth's species. The tampering of the Dracon would have a long-lasting effect on the development of Earth's civilization. Even today, we can see that all around. The creation of the Dracos introduced an entirely new force on the planet, one that would contribute to the rise of conflict and warfare. For many, the Dracos are seen as the ancestors of the darker forces of Earth's history, those who would later be identified with the reptilian myths, the warlike entities, and even the oppressive powers seeming to govern human history. But those who were meant to evolve in alignment with higher spiritual principles faced a deep struggle as their genetics were corrupted angelic humanity. And the Dracon, in their pursuit of control and power, they left behind a legacy that would linger in the genetic memory of humanity. But there were also forces working against this dark imprint, forces that would help us realign the evolutionary path of the planet, and humanity's journey would continue, despite the obstacles placed in its way. Truly, the struggle for balance. Within Earth's Lemurian history, we find ourselves in the middle of a cosmic struggle. The interference of the Dracon race and their genetic manipulation created a ripple effect that shaped the path of human evolution in ways we may never fully understand. The true legacy of these ancient beings is not just in the hybrids they created, but the battle we all know of as light versus dark. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. So as we move forward in time, we must recognize the history that has been woven into our very DNA, the challenges faced by our ancient ancestors, the struggles they encountered, and the influences they were subjected to are not simply the stuff of legend, but they are the foundation of who we are today. That's just a brief overview of a bit of history to begin with right now, but moving forward in new videos it will be discussed more in depth. Now, the council members, primarily drawn from the universal Christos lineages of the Emerald Order and the Blue Flame Melchizedeks, they became the primary custodians of Earth's vast genetic library and timeline history through their consciousness embodiment of this wisdom. They served as the archivists, those entrusted with the sacred duty of collecting, cataloging, and preserving preserving the precious knowledge within these records. These archivists didn't only protect information, they also mapped out the DNA code that functions as a genetic library for all creations across the 12 organic timelines. This work was carried out through the Gnostic process of consciousness integration, where the Guardians became living embodiments of the very knowledge they preserved, living embodiment of the Christ in physical form. The data was compiled into a master set of 12 holographic discs. These records held the foundational understanding of consciousness, mechanics, the nature of reality, the art of manifestation, and the ultimate unification of all expression with the eternal loving one God source. These discs contain highly advanced technological information about the planetary Templar stargates, ley lines, and the spiritual science teachings outlined in the Law of One Consciousness Freedom teachings. These teachings unify sacred sciences with spirituality, offering a framework for understanding the interconnectedness of all things. Now, the founder records originally belonged to the 12 tribes of humanity as spoken of in the Bible, but the names and the races have been all confused. But anyway, they were central to the spiritual teachings commonly shared during the Lemurian and the early Atlantean periods that aren't spoken of today, or considered to be fictional or never have existed, but yet here we are, the descendants of these ancient civilizations, and the memory is within the cellular DNA. Within this time, each holographic disc was carefully protected and overseen by a Magi Grail King, who served as the primary guardian of the planetary stargate that associated with his tribe. The Magi Grail King would assign spiritually trained members from the Ayrian tribes as keepers of the Law of One knowledge. These keepers were entrusted with carrying the sacred wisdom across multiple timelines, ensuring that crucial information would be preserved for future generations. Within this role, they transmitted Ayrian translations of human history detailing the galactic wars and the seeding of the 12 tribes. This vital information was hidden within crystals and other sacred objects buried deep within the earth, awaiting a time when humanity would be ready to access it once again. These actions were a part of a long-term plan to protect and ultimately reveal the teachings guiding humanity's spiritual awakening when the time was right. So during the first Lemurian Holocaust, a large-scale effort was made to hide and protect the contents of historical timelines encoded in the holographic disc, the CDT plates. These sacred records were transmitted into crystals, which were then hidden and buried across the Hawaiian Islands and other island regions. This action was part of a broader strategy to preserve the Christos Ayrian Templar timelines during the chaos of the Lemurian Holocaust. Now, these crystals, now known as Lemurian crystals, serve as vessels for the sacred knowledge of Stargate mechanics and the genetic map of the 12 tribes on Earth, safeguarding this information during the galactic wars that raged across multiple dimensional timelines simultaneously. The Emerald records reveal that humanity is composed of 12 Ayrian tribes, each representing a unique genetic lineage that collectively forms the entire human gene pool. These tribes are descendants of the universal tribal shield, originally incarnated onto this planet from the future timelines of Tara. Each of the 12 tribes is genetically aligned with a specific planetary gate location and its corresponding dimensional sphere within the ley line network. As we incarnate onto Earth, our DNA holds time codes linked to these planetary gates, which are integral to our human tribal identity. When we activate our inner Christos by aligning with the 12th dimensional ray, we begin to awaken these personal planetary keys within us. This process activates the 12D shield, a network of 144 harmonics that flow through our light body, helping us reconnect with the deep spiritual and genetic heritage of our human tribe. This human tribal identity has experienced countless lifetimes, each one contributing to the consciousness evolution cycles that have shaped the angelic human root races throughout the solar system. These souls have been a part of a vast cosmic journey, gathering and evolving DNA codes across multiple realms and timelines. And the original 12 Essene tribes were seated on Earth as a part of a grand evolutionary plan to set into motion through the Covenant of Paliador. This divine pact was designed to rescue the lost souls of Tara, making it possible to reclaim these sacred identities when the stargates would eventually open at the accumulation of the stellar activation cycle.